morning started like any other. Sunlight spilled across our bed, and Sarah was already stirring, her long blonde hair fanned out on the pillow. I remembered thinking how lucky I was, how perfect our life felt. We had a nice house, 2 cars, and what I thought was a rock-solid marriage. We'd been together for 10 years, married for 5. She was my high school sweetheart, the one I always imagined growing old with. But sometimes, perfect mornings turn into the kind of days that shatter everything you thought was real. This was one of those days. I was already at my desk 20 minutes into my workday when the email popped up. Urgent meeting, immediate attendance required. My heart gave a strange little flutter. These kinds of emails never meant good news. I walked down the hall, my stomach churning. The meeting room was full of solemn faces, people looking at their shoes, avoiding eye contact. Then my boss, Mr. Henderson, stepped forward. His face was grim. He started talking about restructuring, about market shifts, about difficult decisions. I didn't hear much after that. All I heard was the word layoffs. And then my name. My world narrowed to a pinprick. I felt a cold dread wash over me, numbing me from the inside out. My job, the one I'd had for 12 years, was gone. Just like that. I walked home in a daze. The city sounds, the honking cars, the chatter of people on the sidewalk, all seemed muffled, distant. It was like I was underwater. How was I going to tell Sarah? How would she react? She always worried about money, even though we were comfortable. I pushed open our front door, the familiar creak suddenly sounding lonely. Sarah was in the kitchen, humming along to a pop song, making herself a late breakfast. She looked up, smiling. "Hey, you are home early," she said. But her smile faltered when she saw my face. "Sarah, I need to tell you something," I said. My voice hoarse, my hands were shaking. I sat down heavily at the kitchen table, feeling the weight of the world on my shoulders. She put down her spatula. "What is it, Alex? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I got laid off," I blurted out. The words felt like sandpaper in my throat. "They're restructuring." My position was eliminated. The color drained from her face. Her eyes, usually so warm and full of life, became cold, distant. "Laid off? What do you mean laid off?" "Alex, our mortgage. The bills. What are we going to do?" Her reaction wasn't what I expected. No hug, no comfort, no "we'll get through this." Just immediate panic, fear, and a flash of something else I couldn't quite name yet. It felt like disappointment, aimed directly at me. "I don't know, Sarah. I just found out. They said they'll give me a severance package. A pretty good one, actually. I haven't seen the details yet." I tried to sound reassuring, but my own voice sounded hollow. She scoffed, a short, sharp sound. "A severance package? What's that, a few weeks' pay? That won't last forever, Alex. How could you let this happen? You were always so stable." The word stung. Let this happen? As if I chose this. As if I had any control over a corporate decision. I stared at her, genuinely shocked. "Sarah, it wasn't my fault. This is happening to a lot of people." She started pacing, her hands running through her hair. No, this can't be happening. We had plans. We were going to remodel the bathroom. What about our vacation next year? We're going to be broke, aren't we? You are broke. Broke. The word hung in the air like a foul smell. It echoed the fear I already felt, but hearing it from her, from my wife, it felt like a punch to the gut. It was an accusation, not a question. I tried to tell her more, tried to explain the severance, the details the HR rep had just given me about the substantial payout, the months of health insurance. But she wasn't listening. Her eyes were wide, darting around the kitchen as if seeing our comfortable home suddenly turned to dust. "I can't do this, Alex," she said, her voice trembling. "I can't live like this. I grew up with nothing. I swore I'd never be broke again." "But we're not broke, Sarah," I insisted, my voice rising. "I have savings, and the severance is significant. It's enough to carry us for a long time while I find something else." She stopped pacing and looked at me, a cold, hard look I'd never seen before. "Number, you don't understand. This is a sign. I can't be with someone who can't provide. I need stability, I need security." My mind reeled. Security? Stability? We had always been a team. We faced everything together. This wasn't just about money, was it? This was about me, about her perception of me. "What are you saying?" I asked, a knot forming in my stomach. She took a deep breath. "I am saying I can't be married to a man who's broke. I am leaving." The words hit me with the force of a physical blow. Leaving. Just like that. After 10 years. After one layoff. My jaw went slack. "You are leaving? Because I lost my job? Sarah, please, think about this." "Here is nothing to think about," she said, her voice now flat, devoid of emotion. "My mind is made up. I am not living a life of uncertainty. I deserve better." I watched, numb, as she walked over to the coat rack, grabbed her purse and pulled out her car keys. She didn't even look back. She just walked out the door, leaving me alone in the kitchen, the scent of her unfinished breakfast still lingering in the air. The morning sun, which had felt so warm and inviting just hours before, now felt like a harsh spotlight on my shattered life. I sat there, trying to make sense of it all. The layoff was a shock, but her abandoning me, her walking out on me, because she thought I was broke, that was the real ice storm. And the worst part? She didn't even know about the massive severance package sitting in my bank account. Untouched, unseen. She didn't even give me a chance to tell her the real details. The sound of Sarah's car pulling out of the driveway echoed in the empty house. I just sat there. Frozen, the kitchen table, a cold slab beneath my hands. My mind raced, but it was like a tangled knot, every thought pulling in a different direction. Leaving? Just like that? Because of a job loss? It felt surreal, like a bad dream I couldn't wake up from. A wave of nausea washed over me. I stood up, walked to the sink, and splashed cold water on my face. It did nothing to clear the fog. My phone buzzed in my pocket. It was the HR representative from my old company. I'd forgotten all about the follow-up call. "Mr. Davis, just checking in to see if you received the comprehensive severance package details via email." Her voice was professional, sympathetic. I cleared my throat. "Yes, I think so. I haven't had a chance to really look at it." "Understandable. Just to reiterate, your severance includes 6 months of full salary, plus an additional lump sum payment equivalent to 18 months of salary. Given your long tenure and the nature of this restructuring, your health benefits will also be covered for 12 months. It's a substantial package designed to provide a solid bridge to your next opportunity." My head spun. 6 months plus 18 months, that was 2 years worth of my salary. My annual salary was significant. This wasn't just a good severance. This was life-changing money for someone like me. It was enough to pay off the rest of our mortgage, a substantial amount of debt, and still leave a huge cushion. It was a golden parachute. And Sarah had walked out on me because she thought I was broke. A bitter laugh escaped my lips. Broke? If anything, I was more financially secure at that moment than I had been in years, thanks to that unexpected windfall. My savings were already healthy too. We weren't living paycheck to paycheck. We had always been responsible, putting money away for retirement, for a rainy day. I thought this was the rainy day. Why hadn't I just told her the full details of the severance right away? In the blur of the layoff meeting, the HR rep had outlined it. But I was so shell-shocked, so focused on the fact that my job was gone, that the specifics hadn't really sunk in. When I got home, I was still reeling. I mentioned a pretty good severance, but the full weight of 2 years' salary hadn't registered with me until just now, talking to the HR rep on the phone. And then Sarah's immediate reaction. The panic, the anger, the accusation of being broke. It had shut me down. I hadn't even had the chance to pull up the email, to show her the numbers, to explain. Her quick dismissal, her complete lack of faith had paralyzed me. Part of me, the shocked, hurt part, also wanted to see how far she would go. Would she really abandon me at the first sign of trouble? I remembered something she used to say, money talks, Alex. She had grown up poor, in a tough neighborhood, and had always been fiercely independent, driven to never experience that kind of hardship again. I admired that drive, but I never realized it was her entire foundation. I thought our foundation was love, trust, partnership. I walked through the quiet house, our house, or rather, my house now, I suppose. The living room, where we'd spent so many evenings curled up on the couch watching movies. The dining room where we'd hosted holidays. Her scent still lingered on her pillow in the bedroom, a faint floral perfume mixed with her natural smell. It felt like a ghost had just walked through. I pulled out my laptop and opened the email. The numbers jumped off the screen. It was all there, laid out clearly. The 6 months base pay, the lump sum, the health benefits, outplacement services if I wanted them. It was real. It was undeniably a lot of money. More than enough to keep us afloat. More than enough to even accelerate some of our financial goals. A new kind of anger started to simmer beneath my despair. She didn't even ask to see the details. She didn't give me a chance to explain. She just assumed the worst. Assumed I was instantly a failure, and walked away. The image of her packing her small suitcase, throwing clothes into it with furious movements, flashed in my mind. That happened just minutes after she said she was leaving. She was so ready to go, so ready to abandon ship. And what about the us she always talked about? Together forever, she'd whispered on our wedding day. That phrase felt hollow now, a cruel joke. It wasn't about us, it was about her comfort, her security. If I couldn't guarantee that, I was expendable. I closed the laptop. The secret of the severance package, which had initially been a blur in my shock, then a missed opportunity to calm her fears, now felt like a shield. A strange, twisted shield against the betrayal. If she left me assuming I was broke, then let her think that. Let her live with her assumptions. Let her live with the consequences of her lack of faith. A cold resolve settled in my heart. She had made her choice. And now I would make mine. I wouldn't chase her, I wouldn't beg. And I definitely wouldn't tell her about the money. Not yet, anyway. The days that followed Sarah's departure blurred into a painful, lonely haze. The house, which had once felt so vibrant and full of life, now echoed with silence. Every room held a memory, a ghost of Sarah's presence. Her half-finished book on the nightstand, her favorite coffee mug in the drying rack, a stray hair tie on the bathroom counter. These small remnants were like tiny, sharp knives twisting in the wound she'd left. I tried to keep busy, to avoid the crushing emptiness. I started cleaning, scrubbing away at the faint dust, as if I could scrub away the sorrow too. I cooked simple meals, but the food tasted like ash. I slept little, the bed feeling vast and cold without her beside me. Each morning I'd wake up with a jolt, a split second of confusion, thinking she'd be there before the harsh reality crashed down again. She was gone. My parents called, worried. "Alex, what happened? Sarah just called us, said you lost your job and she had to leave. Is everything all right?" My mother's voice was laced with concern. I swallowed hard. How much to tell them? I didn't want to badmouth Sarah, not really. But I also couldn't hide the truth of her immediate departure. "Yeah, Mom, I got laid off. It was sudden. And Sarah, she said she couldn't handle the uncertainty. She just left." I kept the severance a secret from them too. Partly out of habit, partly because I wasn't ready to explain it all, and partly because I still wanted to process what it meant for me, for my future, before anyone else got involved. My mother was quiet for a moment. "Oh, Alex, I am so sorry. About the job, but mostly about Sarah. That's not like her. Or I thought it wasn't. We always thought she was so loyal." Her voice trailed off, a hint of disappointment there. My father, usually a man of few words, spoke up. "Son, you come stay with us for a bit. You shouldn't be alone right now." I appreciated the offer, but I knew I needed to stay here in this house to face the reality head on. "No, Dad, I think I need to be here. I need to figure things out." My friends were also shocked. When I finally gathered the courage to tell my best friend Mark, he was furious. "She did what? Because you lost your job? Are you kidding me, Alex? That's cold, man. That is really, really messed up. What about in sickness and in health, for richer or for poorer? She just threw it all away for money." His anger, strangely, was a balm. It validated my own simmering rage. The feeling of betrayal that was slowly replacing the raw heartbreak. It wasn't just about the money, was it? It was about her character, her values, her inability to stand by me when things got tough. The broke accusation was just an excuse, a shallow cover for a deeper flaw in her. I spent hours just sitting, staring at the walls, thinking about what I wanted to do. The severance package was a heavy presence in my mind. It was a lifeline, but it also felt like a cruel joke. Here was this substantial amount of money, Marv, to cushion any blow, enough to give me time, and the person I was supposed to share it with had abandoned me, thinking I was destitute. I thought about getting another job right away. Anything, just to prove her wrong. But then a different thought started to form. This money, this unexpected freedom could be an opportunity. An opportunity to redefine myself, to rebuild on my own terms. It wasn't just about replacing my old salary. It was about creating something new, something that truly resonated with me. I pulled out a notepad and started making lists. What did I always want to do? What skills did I have that I hadn't used in my corporate job? I thought about my passion for woodworking, a hobby I'd always put on the back burner. I thought about the online course I'd always wanted to take in digital marketing. Suddenly, the world which had felt so small and suffocating started to expand, just a tiny bit. The heartbreak was still immense. I missed Sarah, the Sarah I thought I knew. The Sarah who laughed at my bad jokes, who snuggled close to me at night, who was my partner. But that Sarah was gone, replaced by this stranger who abandoned me at the first sign of trouble. Pain of her leaving was intertwined with the bitter knowledge of her true motivation. One evening I found myself staring at her wedding photo on the mantelpiece. We were smiling, young and full of hope. My arm was around her waist, her hand in mine. We looked so happy. I remembered the vows we exchanged. For richer, for poorer. The words echoed in the silence of the house. A cruel irony. She had chosen for richer, and I, unknowingly, had become for poorer in her eyes. I picked up the photo, turned it face down, and placed it back on the mantel. It was time to stop looking back. It was time to start looking forward, even if the path ahead was terrifying and uncertain. The house was empty, yes, but it was also mine. And my future, though clouded by pain, was also mine to shape. The initial shock of Sarah leaving slowly morphed into a gnawing emptiness. The silence in the house became a constant companion, a heavy blanket that smothered any joy. I tried to fill it. I binge-watched television shows, cooked elaborate meals for one, and even tried to get back into my old hobbies. But nothing felt right. Every activity was tainted by the ghost of what used to be, the shared laughter, the quiet companionship. Solitude had a bitter taste. Job searching was a nightmare. I updated my resume, sent out dozens of applications, and got countless automated rejections. It felt like I was screaming into the void. Each rejection email was a fresh stab, a reminder of my unemployment. Of Sarah's words, "You are broke." The severance was a comfort, but it didn't replace the validation of a job, the structure of a routine, or the feeling of being productive. One afternoon, my phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. It was Sarah. My heart leaped, then immediately sank. Part of me hoped for remorse, for an apology. The other part braced for another blow. "Hey, Alex," she said, her voice cool, distant. No warmth, no concern. "I just wanted to check on a few things. Have you heard anything back from your old company about your final paychecks? And what about the health insurance? I need to know if I am covered." My blood ran cold. My blood ran cold. That was it? No? How are you doing? No? Are you okay? Just straight to the financial logistics. Solidified everything Mark had said, everything I was starting to suspect. It wasn't about me. It was about her own perceived safety net. "The final paycheck was processed last week," I said, my voice flat. "And yes, your health insurance is covered for another 12 months under my severance package." I almost choked on the words. She was still benefiting from the very package she refused to acknowledge, the one she assumed didn't exist in any meaningful way. "Oh, good," she said, a hint of relief in her voice. "And have you found anything new yet? Any prospects?" Her tone was casual, almost like she was asking about the weather. "Nothing yet," I lied, not wanting to share any details of my struggles or my new financial reality. I wasn't going to give her the satisfaction of thinking I was desperate, or the shock of realizing how comfortable I still was. "Right. Well, I hope things work out for you," she said, a dismissive tone. "I'm staying at my sister's place for now. She's been really supportive. Says I made the right decision." That hit me hard. Her sister, who I always thought liked me, now validating Sarah's abandonment. It felt like the world was ganging up on me, confirming her shallow narrative. "Okay, Sarah, is that all?" I asked, wanting to end the call, wanting to escape the coldness of her voice. "Yeah, I guess so. Just wanted to make sure things were taken care of. Bye." And she hung up. Just like that. No goodbye, no pleasantry, no warmth. It was a transaction. And I was the one left, feeling like I'd just been robbed. Not of money, but of dignity, of trust. The anger intensified. It wasn't just about being abandoned anymore. It was about the injustice, the public narrative she was creating. I imagined her telling her sister, her friends, how she was forced to leave because her husband became broke and couldn't provide. The lie festered. I remembered a conversation from years ago when we were first dating. We were talking about our dreams, our fears. She had told me about her childhood, her single mother struggling to make ends meet, the constant worry about bills. I had vowed then to always protect her from that fear, to provide a stable, secure life. And for years I did. I worked hard, saved, planned. Now, in her eyes, I had failed, even though the reality was the exact opposite. I got up and walked into the living room, staring out the window at the quiet street. The sun was setting, casting long shadow. My life felt like those shadows, stretching out, bleak and empty. But then, a flicker. A tiny spark of defiance. Why was I letting her narrative define me? Why was I wallowing in this misery? She had walked away from me, from our shared life, based on a false premise. She didn't deserve my despair. She deserved my indifference, my success. The severance package, sitting silently in my account, suddenly felt like a weapon. A weapon I hadn't deployed. I was not broke. I was actually in a stronger financial position than many, even with no immediate job. This was my secret, my power. And I would use it not to spite her, but to build a life so undeniably good that her absence wouldn't even register as a void, but as an opportunity. The idea, once a faint whisper, started to grow. What if I used this time, this money, not just to find another job, but to pivot, to create something new, to prove to myself, and incidentally to her, that I was more than just my job, more than just a provider, more than someone who could be discarded when perceived as broke. The bitter taste of solitude was still there, but now a subtle flavor of resolve began to mix with it. It was time to stop being a victim. It was time to become something new. The shift wasn't sudden, but it was definite. The anger and resentment, while still present, began to fuel something constructive rather than destructive. I was tired of feeling like a victim. Phone call from Sarah, the coldness in her voice, and her sister's implicit judgment had solidified my resolve. I wouldn't just survive, I would thrive. And I wouldn't do it for her, or to spite her, but for myself. I opened my laptop again, not to endlessly scroll through job boards, but to research. I started with that woodworking hobby. I'd always loved working with my hands, turning raw wood into something beautiful and functional. Friends had often admired my custom bookshelves and small tables. Could this be more than a hobby? I researched local workshops, online courses, and even small business grants. The severance package was the key. It wasn't just a safety net. It was an investment fund. I could afford to take a risk, to pursue something I genuinely enjoyed. Something that didn't feel like just another cog in a corporate machine. I found a local woodworking studio that offered advanced courses in furniture design and cabinet making. It was expensive, but the severance meant it was within reach. I signed up. The idea of learning a new skill, of creating something tangible, brought a spark back into my eyes that had been missing for weeks. My first day at the studio felt like a revelation. The smell of sawdust and fresh wood filled the air, a welcome contrast to the sterile office environment I had left behind. My instructor, an older man named Frank, with calloused hands and a kind smile, was patient and knowledgeable. He seemed to sense my quiet determination. "Good to see someone so focused, Alex," he'd say, watching me meticulously sand a piece of oak. "Most folks come in here just to pass the time. You seem like you are building something more than just furniture." He was right. I wasn't just building furniture. I was rebuilding myself. The physical labor, the precision required, the satisfaction of seeing a project take shape. All of it was incredibly therapeutic. It grounded me, pulled me out of my head and into the present moment. I also started exercising again. I joined a gym, something Sarah and I had always talked about but never consistently did. The physical exertion was a great release for the pent-up stress and sadness. I pushed myself, feeling my body grow stronger, and with it, my mind. I started eating better, sleeping better. The dark circles under my eyes began to fade. One evening, after a particularly satisfying day at the studio, I ran into Mark at the grocery store. He looked at me, surprised. "Alex, you look good," he said, genuinely surprised. "What's going on? Last time I saw you, you looked like a zombie." I managed a genuine smile. "I am taking a woodworking course full-time, learning how to build custom furniture." Mark's eyebrows shot up. "No way, that's awesome. So you are not job hunting?" "Oh, I am," I clarified, still keeping the full extent of my financial security close to my chest. But I figured, why not use this time to do something I love, something I am passionate about? If it works out, maybe it can be more than a hobby. Mark clapped me on the shoulder. "Good for you, man. Seriously. It's about time you did something for yourself, and to hell with Sarah and her shallow BS." His comment, though blunt, didn't sting like it once would have. I nodded. Yeah, to hell with it. The thought of Sarah still brought a pang, but it was dulled by a growing sense of purpose and self-worth. I was no longer the broken man she thought she had left behind. I was transforming. I was learning, growing, building. My hands, once accustomed to a keyboard, were now covered in sawdust and calluses, and I had never felt more alive. The severance package, once a symbol of my sudden unemployment, had become a symbol of liberation. It gave me the freedom to explore, to create, to heal. It allowed me to transform what felt like the end of my world into the beginning of a new one. The house might still be empty of Sarah's presence, but it was slowly filling with my own newfound purpose, my projects, my plans. The glimmer of hope was steadily becoming a flame. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was starting to truly live. As I immersed myself in my new routine, focusing on my woodworking and my physical health, I started to hear things. The grapevine, as it always does, was buzzing. It started subtly, a sympathetic look from an old neighbor, a hesitant question from a distant relative at a family gathering. "Alex, I heard about your job. I am so sorry. And about Sarah. Must be so tough going through all that." My aunt, usually so cheerful, looked at me with pity. I just nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. Been a challenging few months, Aunt Carol, but I am getting there. Then came the more pointed remarks. I was at the local coffee shop, grabbing a latte after a long morning at the studio, when I overheard a conversation at the next table. It was two women, former colleagues of Sarah's, who I recognized. "Did you hear about Alex Davis?" one whispered. "Sarah's ex-husband. Apparently he lost his job and she just couldn't take it. Said he was totally broke, couldn't provide for her anymore." The other woman clicked her tongue. "Oh, that's awful. Poor Sarah. It's so hard when men lose their ambition, you know. She always had such high standards." I felt my face flush. Broke, no ambition. The words, Sarah's words, echoed in the small cafe. It was infuriating. Here I was, building a new life, learning new skills, investing in myself, and she was out there painting me as some kind of pathetic failure. It wasn't just Sarah's colleagues. My own former co-workers, whom I occasionally ran into, also carried a strange mixture of sympathy and awkwardness. They'd offer vague condolences about my job loss, but there was an undertone, a suggestion that they knew more, that they knew the real story of why Sarah left. I knew Sarah was controlling the narrative. She was telling everyone that I was a financial wreck, that she was forced to leave a sinking ship. She was painting herself as the victim, the one who had to make a hard choice for her own survival. And the worst part was, people were buying. They saw the layoff, they saw her immediate departure, and they filled in the blanks with the easiest, most dramatic story. The poor, broke Alex story. It ate at me, gnawing at my peace. Sometimes, I wanted to scream the truth from the rooftops. I wanted to pull out my bank statement, shove it in their faces and say, "Broke? Does this look broke to you?" She left because she's shallow, because she's a coward who runs at the first sign of trouble, not because I couldn't provide. But I didn't. I held back. Part of me, the part that was still deeply hurt, wanted her to discover the truth on her own terms. Wanted her to realize the enormous mistake she had made. To see the value she had so carelessly discarded. I wanted her to feel the sting of regret, the humiliation of her own misjudgment. I also realized that keeping the severance a secret from the world was, in a way, protecting me. It allowed me to see who truly cared, who truly stood by me. My parents, Mark, Frank from the studio. They were the ones who supported me without knowing the full financial picture. The kindness was genuine, untainted by the prospect of my wealth. One evening, I was at the studio late, finishing a custom coffee table I was really proud of. It was going to be my first major piece, something I planned to sell at a local artisan market. As I buffed the wood to a gleaming finish, I thought about Sarah. She would have loved this table. She always appreciated beautiful things. But then, she only appreciated them if they came from a place of security she approved of. Not from a layoff, not from a perceived failure. The rumors still stung, but they no longer crippled me. Instead, they added fuel to my fire. Every time I heard someone express pity for poor Alex, it strengthened my resolve. Let them believe the lies. Let them think I was down and out, because while they were busy talking, I was busy building. I was building a new life, a new identity, and a new future that was far richer than anything Sarah could have imagined, both financially and personally. The rumor mill was turning, but it was grinding out a story that was rapidly becoming irrelevant to the man I was becoming. Months passed, and my new life began to solidify. My woodworking business, which I tentatively named Alex's Artisan Woodworks, was slowly gaining traction. I started an online store, created a social media presence, and even got a few custom orders from word of mouth. It was exhilarating, exhausting, and deeply fulfilling. I was working harder than ever, but it didn't feel like work. It felt like purpose. My physical transformation was also evident. The regular workouts had sculpted my body, and the mental clarity from pursuing my passion had sharpened my mind. I carried myself differently, with a new confidence. The despair was largely gone, replaced by a quiet strength. "Then," she called again. This time, her number showed up on my caller ID. I hesitated, but curiosity and a faint echo of the old Alex made me answer. "Alex, it's Sarah." Her voice was softer this time, a little less brittle than our last conversation. "Sarah?" I replied, my voice calm, neutral. "How are you doing? I heard you are still not working, professionally speaking. Are you okay?" There was a hint of something in her voice I hadn't heard before, a touch of concern, or perhaps feigned curiosity. But I knew the subtext. "Are you still broke?" I smiled slightly. "I am doing very well, actually. I've started my own business. Custom furniture, it's been quite successful." I kept it vague, not mentioning the specific financial success, just the general direction. A beat of silence. "Oh, really?" That's unexpected. Are you making a living from it? The shift in her tone was palpable. Concern was replaced by a more direct, almost probing curiosity. I am, I confirmed, letting the statement hang in the air. Could almost hear the gears turning in her head, the image of broke Alex clashing with the reality of successful entrepreneur Alex. Well, that's good, she stammered. I ran into Mark the other day. He seemed to think you were struggling, I scoffed internally. Mark probably heard her rumors and assumed I was still reeling. Mark isn't privy to all my affairs, Sarah. Besides, I think he knows who stuck around when things got tough and who didn't. The words slipped out, sharper than I intended, a momentary lapse in my resolve to remain emotionally detached. Another silence. This one was longer, heavier. Look, Alex, about that I know I left quickly. It was just so much, the layoff, the uncertainty. I panicked. You know my history with money, my childhood. It terrified me. Her voice was laced with a hint of vulnerability, a plea for understanding. My heart hardened. Panic. Sarah, you didn't just panic. You walked out the door within hours of me telling you I lost my job. You didn't ask about the details. You didn't give me a chance to explain the severance, the substantial severance package that was sitting there, waiting to be used. You assumed the worst and abandoned me. There was a gasp on the other end. Severance package? What are you talking about? You said a good one. You didn't say substantial. You never told me the details. Her voice was suddenly louder, a mix of shock and accusation. You didn't give me a chance to, I stated, my voice firm. You were too busy packing your bags and judging me for being broke. You were too busy telling everyone I was a financial failure. Did you even consider that I might have had a plan? That I wasn't just going to roll over. She was quiet again, but I could tell she was reeling. The idea that she had abandoned a financially secure, not to mention rapidly succeeding version of me, was clearly a blow. So, you mean we wouldn't have been broke? She whispered. A hint of something I couldn't quite place in her tone. Regret? Disappointment that she missed out? No, Sarah, we wouldn't have been broke at all. In fact, we would have been more secure than ever. But you didn't care to find that out, did you? You only cared about your own immediate comfort. I decided not to reveal the full extent of the package just yet. Let her stew in the knowledge that she'd made a grave error, but not fully comprehend the depth of it. I don't know what to say, she mumbled. Here is nothing to say, Sarah, I replied, my voice steady. You made your choice, and I've made mine. I am moving forward. Are you seeing anyone? She asked, a sudden shift in topic, a desperate attempt to regain some control or relevance. That's none of your business, I said, ending the conversation with finality. Goodbye, Sarah. I hung up before she could say another word. I sat there, my hand still gripping the phone. That had been difficult, a direct confrontation, even if it was over the phone. But it felt necessary. The truth, even just a partial truth, had been revealed. She now knew she hadn't left a broke man, but one who had opportunities she never bothered to explore. The satisfaction was not sweet, but it was there, a cold, hard sense of justice. She had to live with that now, and I was finally free. Months turned into a year, then another. Alex's artisan woodworks flourished. My custom furniture pieces, blending modern design with traditional craftsmanship, gained a reputation. I hired an assistant, moved into a larger studio space, and even started getting inquiries from interior design. The severance package, wisely invested and carefully managed, had provided the runway I needed to build something real, something that was entirely mine. My days were long, but immensely satisfying. I still worked hard, But now it was for myself, for a vision I believed in. The financial freedom the severance provided, combined with the growing success of my business, meant I was more secure than I had ever been. No more corporate meetings, no more office politics, just the smell of sawdust, the satisfying thud of a hammer, and the joy of creating. My physical and mental well-being continued to improve dramatically. I was stronger, leaner, and healthier. The deep-set lines of stress around my eyes had smoothed out, replaced by a confident spark. I carried myself with an ease that hadn't been there before. Friends commented on it constantly. "Seriously, Alex, you are a completely different person," Mark said one evening over beers. "Happier, calmer, even funnier somehow. Sarah did you a favor, man, even if it felt like the end of the world back then." I thought about it. Was it a favor? In a twisted way, perhaps. Her abandonment had forced me to confront my life, to redefine my priorities, and to discover strengths I never knew I possessed. Without her leaving, I might have just found another corporate job, continued the same routine, and never pursued my true passions. Pain was real, but the growth that followed was undeniable. The empty house, once a source of lingering sorrow, had become a canvas for my new life. I had renovated it slowly, intentionally, turning it into a home that reflected my new self. The kitchen, where Sarah had delivered her cruel dismissal, was now filled with the warm scent of baked bread and the occasional hum of a woodworking podcast. Her old belongings, long gone, were replaced by pieces of my own art, my favorite books, and comfortable, functional furniture I had built myself. I had also started dating again. It was tentative at first, but I met someone new, a woman named Emily. She was an artist, a painter, with a quiet strength and a genuine curiosity about the world. She found my passion for woodworking fascinating, and her eyes lit up when I showed her my latest creation. She didn't care about my past job or my bank account, only about the person I was now. It was a refreshing change from the material-focused world I had been in with Sarah. Art conversations were deep and meaningful, and our connection felt authentic. The memories of Sarah still surfaced occasionally, like old photographs gathering dust, but they no longer held the power to wound. The heartbreak had faded, replaced by a quiet sense of detachment. I no longer yearned for her, no longer wished she would come back. Her departure, once a gaping wound, had healed, leaving a strong, resilient scar. I had even started telling a few close friends about the full extent of the severance package, months after Sarah left. Their reactions were varied: shock, then admiration for my composure. They understood why I hadn't told Sarah, why I'd let her leave under false pretenses. They saw it as a silent protest, a quiet dignity in the face of her calculated abandonment. My life was no longer defined by the layoff or the heartbreak. It was defined by creation, by growth, by purpose. I was thriving, not just surviving. The transformation was complete. The heartbroken man she left behind was gone. In his place stood someone stronger, wiser, and more genuinely fulfilled than he had ever been. The secret of the severance package, once a burden, was now a quiet testament to her colossal misjudgment. A misjudgment that had inadvertently paved the way for my entirely new and much better life. It had been nearly 2 years since Sarah walked out. My business was thriving, Emily and I were growing closer, and my life felt incredibly peaceful and secure. I rarely thought about Sarah anymore, except as a distant memory, a painful but ultimately formative chapter. Then the call came. It wasn't Sarah's number. It was my mother's. Her voice was hesitant, almost apologetic. "Alex, I just wanted to give you a heads up. Sarah called me. She's asking about you." My stomach tightened slightly. "Asking what, Mom?" Well, she heard through a mutual friend, I think, about your woodworking business. She said she saw some of your pieces online. She seems surprised. She was asking if you are doing well, if you are back on your feet. My mother paused, choosing her words carefully. I didn't tell her anything specific about your finances, of course, but I did say you were doing great, building something wonderful. I sighed. The rumor mill had finally caught up to the truth, or at least a version of it. My success was no longer a secret. It was a public fact. And Sarah, the woman who left me for being broke, was now curious. A few days later, she showed up, unannounced. I was in my studio, covered in sawdust, listening to music, when I heard a knock on the main door. I opened it, and there she stood. Sarah. She looked different. Not bad, but tired. Her usual polished appearance was slightly rumpled. Her eyes, however, were wide, scanning my large, bustling studio, taking in the finished furniture pieces, the expensive machinery, the activity. Alex, she said, her voice a little breathy. Wow. I heard you were doing well, but I didn't imagine this. This is incredible. I leaned against the doorframe, my arms crossed. What do you want, Sarah? My voice was calm, devoid of the anger or pain that would have been there 2 years ago. She flinched slightly at my coldness. I just wanted to see for myself. I heard about your business, and I wanted to apologize for how I left. I was wrong, Alex. I was so wrong. The apology felt hollow, opportunistic. You left because you thought I was broke, Sarah. Because you didn't have faith in me. Because you couldn't handle a single bump in the road. You didn't just panic. You abandoned me. And then you spent months telling everyone I was a failure. Her eyes darted away, avoiding my gaze. I know I did, and I was wrong. I've been through a lot since then. My new relationship didn't work out. My job isn't as secure as I thought. I've been thinking a lot about us. About what we had. I almost laughed. What we had. She had thrown it away without a second thought. And now that her own life wasn't going as planned, now that she saw my apparent success, she was back. What we had was broken by your fear and your lack of faith, Sarah. I said, my voice steady. You weren't just scared. You were willing to sacrifice a decade of our lives together for a perceived financial insecurity. An insecurity that, as you now know, wasn't even real. She looked up at me, her eyes glistening. I know, and I regret it. Every day I see what you've built here, Alex, and I see the man you've become. You are so strong, so capable. I was a fool. She took a step closer. Can we talk about us? About maybe fixing things? We had something special, didn't we? Her words hung in the air. The old Alex, the one who loved her unconditionally, might have been tempted. Might have seen this as a chance for redemption, for closure. But the new Alex, the one forged in the fires of betrayal and resilience, knew better. She wasn't interested in me. She was interested in what I represented now. Stability, success, security. The very things she had abandoned me over, the very things she assumed I lacked. I looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not the woman I once loved, but a stranger whose motives were purely selfish. The stage was set for the final act. 'Twas time to unveil the full truth, not to hurt her, but to set myself completely free. I watched Sarah's face, searching for genuine remorse, but all I saw was a mix of calculated regret and transparent ambition. Her eyes lingered on the expensive tools, the quality of the wood, the overall success of the studio. She wasn't seeing me, she was seeing a missed opportunity. Fix things, Sarah? I repeated, my voice calm but firm. You want to fix things after you abandoned me the day I lost my job? After you packed your bags because you thought I was broke. She opened her mouth to interrupt, but I held up a hand. Let me finish. You said you panicked. You said you were terrified by my financial situation. Do you remember what I told you that day, just before you walked out? I told you there was a severance package, a good one. She nodded slowly. Yes, but you didn't say it was significant. You didn't give me details. I thought it was just a few weeks' pay. I took a deep breath. You didn't give me a chance to give you the details, Sarah. You didn't even ask. You simply assumed the worst, believed the story you wanted to believe, and ran. Well, let me tell you the details now. The details you were too quick to dismiss. I paused, letting the silence hang heavy between us. That good severance package. It wasn't just a few weeks' pay. It was 2 full years of my salary. 18 months of a lump sum payout, plus 6 months of base pay, on top of all my accrued vacation and sick leave, and a year of fully covered health benefits. Her eyes widened, her jaw dropping slightly. The color drained from her face. She looked like she'd been slapped. 2 years of salary? She whispered, the words barely audible. Yes, Sarah, 2 years. $250,000. Sitting in my bank account, untouched, unseen by you. The day you left me. Assuming I was broke, I was sitting on $250,000. Enough to pay off our entire mortgage, enough to comfortably live for years while I figured out my next steps. Enough to invest and build this entire business from the ground up. She stumbled back a step, her hand flying to her mouth. Her eyes were glazed over, filled with a mixture of shock, horror, and a dawning terrible realization. The full weight of her catastrophic misjudgment crashed down on her. You had all that, and you let me leave? You let me think you were broke. Her voice was thin, accusing. You didn't give me a choice, I countered, my voice rising slightly with the finality of it all. You didn't trust me. You didn't have faith in our partnership. You chose to abandon me based on a shallow, baseless assumption. You chose money over our vows, over our history, over me. I wasn't broke, Sarah. I was simply laid off, and you, in your fear and greed, couldn't see past your own limited vision. Her eyes darted around the thriving studio, then back to my face, seeing me not as a broken man, but as a man who had not only survived her abandonment, but flourished beyond recognition. The irony was a cruel lash. I made such a mistake, she mumbled, tears welling in her eyes. But I knew they weren't for me, or for the pain she caused. They were for herself, for the wealth and security she had so carelessly thrown away. Yes, Sarah, you did, I confirmed, feeling a profound sense of closure. A monumental mistake. And that mistake gave me the freedom to become the man I am today. A man who knows his worth, a man who knows what true partnership means, and a man who is incredibly grateful that you showed your true colors when you did. I walked toward the door, opening it wide. Tea here is nothing to fix, Sarah. We're done. Our chapter closed the day you walked out convinced I was worthless. You chose your path, and I chose mine. And my path led me to something far better, far more authentic, and far more fulfilling than anything we ever had. She stood there, frozen, a picture of profound regret. I didn't feel a flicker of pity, just a vast, liberating emptiness where she used to be. Goodbye, Sarah, I said, my voice firm, final. She didn't respond. She just stared at me, then at the bustling studio, then back at me, a silent testament to her loss. I waited for her to leave, and finally, slowly she turned and walked out the door, her shoulders slumped. This time there was no car to pull out of the driveway. Just the click of the latch as I closed the door, sealing off the past. I walked back into my studio, the hum of the machine suddenly sounding like a symphony of creation. Emily walked in, her arms laden with art supplies, her smile bright. She didn't ask about the woman who had just left. She simply looked at me, her eyes full of understanding and quiet affection. "Ready to work on that new dining table design?" she asked, her voice soft. I grinned, picking up a piece of oak, feeling the smooth grain beneath my fingers. "More than ready," I said, turning my back on the ghost of the past and walking toward the vibrant, rich future I had built. The heartbreak was gone. Only peace and the promise of a life truly lived remained.